Hello, YouTube. As you saw from the intro, my name is Dr. David Harvey. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, and I've been in practice for over 20 years at this point. I've treated patients of all different ages, all different conditions, had a lot of fun doing that. But one thing I've never done before is I've never made a YouTube video before. So this is my first one, and I'd very much like to welcome you to it. I'm very excited to get started. But before we do that, I'd like to just go over some general ideas about what you can expect from the channel and what my goals are for putting these videos out for you. First of all, goals. I have two goals with this channel above all: simplicity and hope. And what I mean by that is, what I very much like to do with this channel is give you information on many, many different topics. Chiefly among them, of course, we'll talk about things such as health, and it won't just be a chiropractic focus, although, of course, that's my profession. So some of that might sneak in from time to time, and we might have videos just on that alone. But we're also going to talk about things about nutrition, lifestyle, current events, which we're going to do today, and also facts, opinions, and ideas. Now, I want to keep these things simple. That's my primary goal. I don't want to use a lot of technical terms. I don't want to use a lot of sciencey stuff. I just want to keep things simple and understandable for everybody. Second thing I want to do is I want to give everybody hope. Okay, that can come in a lot of different ways. A lot of different people have different ideas about that. But primarily what I want to do is always want to get across to you that no matter where you are in life, whether you're on a high or a low or somewhere in between, tomorrow can always be better for you than today. And I hopefully can help you with this information achieve some of those goals for yourself. Now, primarily though, what I want to do is I want you to understand that this channel and these videos are for you. I'm making these for you so I can get information to you in, again, an understandable, simple way. So if you have any ideas, recommendations, requests, I would be more than happy to take those in. And if I'm qualified to speak about them, I'll make a video for it just for you. Also, as we go along, another thing I want to make sure you understand, you don't have to agree with me. You have no, I'm not forcing you to agree with me. I'm going to give you information as best I can. You may have other information. I don't know it all, but I will try to do my best to give things to you that are informative and correct as much as I can. But again, you don't have to agree with me, and you can put those disagreements in the comments if you'd like. I only ask one thing of you, whether you agree or not. Please, 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 let's keep this channel civil. Let's keep this channel clean. If you have disagreements with me, that's perfectly fine. You are more than welcome to type them out, and I will listen to them, and I will comment or reply as best I can. But I just ask that you just keep one thing in mind as you're writing. Same thing I keep in mind when I write a comment to someone else's video. Pretend you're the one making the video, sitting where I am right now. And how would you like to be spoken to? How would you like to be written to? If you would like someone to treat you with respect, please treat that other person with respect as well. So that's what we're going to do on this channel. Thanks a lot I appreciate that. So on to today's primary topic. This wasn't how I wanted to start the channel, in all honesty. I wanted to start off with something a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun, but things being as they are and current events being what they are, and top of mind right now with everybody is this coronavirus situation. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to keep it simple. And what I hope to do with this video is to give you some general overviews about some terminology things, some frequently asked questions, some strategies about what you can do for yourself and what you can do for your community to help you get through this situation. And again, we will sum it all up at the end. So starting with the coronavirus, what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about some terminology. We'll start there, and then we're going to get into some other things. But again, before I do that, sorry, one other thing I want to bring up to you here is this. With this coronavirus, we don't know everything at this point. This is a very, very fluid situation. It's a very dynamic situation, and we're learning things about this virus literally every day as it goes on. So I'm making this video early or mid part of March at this point of 2020. Things may have changed by the time you've listened to it, and I may have to amend this video or even change it completely, but we're going to give you the best information as we have it right now. So again, back to the terminology. You've heard a lot of different terms flying around with this, and it kind of gets confusing sometimes. So I just want to sort of level the playing field a little bit. First thing we'll talk about is the coronavirus and what that term means. A coronavirus is a type of a virus. Okay, you can say I have a virus. That tells people you're sick, but that doesn't tell you much else about it. It's kind of like saying I have a car. All right, there are many, many different makes and models and types and colors of cars. And simply saying you have a car doesn't give the person you're talking to about it much information at all. It just gives you a general idea. So saying you have a virus is like that. There are many, many different makes and models of viruses as well. One type of virus is what's called a coronavirus. Just like a type of car would be, I don't know, a Ford, for example. So saying you have a coronavirus just basically said I have a car and it's a Ford. So This type of virus is specific to about 7 of them that affect human beings. 2 of them that you might have heard recently and talked about again with this virus as well are SARS, which stands for a severe acute respiratory syndrome, and also MERS, which is Middle East respiratory syndrome. Both of those have been in the news within the past number of years, and you may have heard of them, or this new coronavirus compared to that. Speaking of new, the next term I want to go over something called novel, because you've heard about this being called the novel coronavirus. Novel just means new. It's that simple. What we're meaning by that is this virus isn't brand new to the planet, but it is brand new to human beings. Up until this point, it's only been present in animals, but this one was able to make a leap from one species to another and start to infect humans. Now, the official name of this particular type of coronavirus is what's called the SARS-CoV or CoV-2. Now, again, that's like saying I have a car, I have a virus. What type of car? A Ford. What type of virus? A coronavirus. Oh, what type of Ford do you have? Well, I have a Ford Fusion, the SARS-CoV-2. And then we hear the final term, which is COVID-19. And you're hearing this one more and more and more and more lately. COVID-19 is actually the disease you get if you're infected with this coronavirus called SARS-CoV-2. So that's when you get the symptoms, which we'll go over in a moment. You say you were infected and you now have COVID-19. So if we put all these terms together, we can make a sentence like this. John was infected with the novel coronavirus called SARS-CoV-2, and now he has a disease called COVID-19. So hopefully that clears up the terminology for you a little bit. All these terms are talking about the exact same virus, but different stations, different news outlets, different sources are using various mixtures of these terms. So I just wanted to make all that clear for you. Now, some information generally about this virus and what we know about it so far. We know that coronaviruses in general can infect a lot of different types of species, including humans. And as I said earlier, this is now the 7th type of coronavirus that's known to be able to impact or infect humans. Now, 4 of these 7, no big deal. They cause mild, common cold type illnesses. So not much is talked about with them. It's not really a threat. Now, the 2 newest ones, though, get a bit more severe. Again, the SARS and the MERS I talked about earlier. Where does this one fit? Well, most people are saying that for the most part, for the most people that get infected with this, it's not going to be a big deal. It's going to be a light to mild infection that's going to go away in about 10 days or so, and that's going to be that. But it can get severe for certain numbers of the population, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in a moment as well. Now, the new one that we're talking about, the SARS-CoV-2, as well as SARS itself and MERS, are all coronaviruses, again, as I said earlier, that are thought to have come to humans from animals. Now, this particular virus was first detected in China, a place called Hubei province, China, in a city called Wuhan City. Now, the first infections that we know of at this point were linked to a live animal market where people in that area go to buy their food. And we know that certain coronaviruses in certain situations, if conditions are just right, they can jump from one species to another. And we think that's what happened here. Now, one theory, again, says that this one may have originated in bats. We don't know that for sure, but that's one of the theories. But it is also possible that there might have been another species between bats and humans that it jumped to first before it went to humans. Does it matter at this point? Not really, but if you're looking for where did this come from or why, that's kind of the theories we have going right now. How is it spread? This is an important one. We need to talk about this one. It's spread to others at this point via droplets. Droplets of liquid that's expelled from someone who's infected when they cough or they sneeze, okay? Basically, water vapor, saliva vapor, mucus vapor. I know it's fun to talk about. We're going to talk about a few other fun things like that along the way, but that's kind of how it goes. Now, these airborne droplets, once they fly out of someone who has this in a cough or a sneeze, they can land on someone else's mouth or in someone else's nose, or if you're walking by, you take a deep breath or inhale, it'll go into your lungs that way as well. Now, that's a primary way this virus is spread. A couple other ways that it might be able to be spread, but probably not the primary way it can be spread. You can possibly be infected by touching a surface or object that the virus is on, that someone who was infected touched before you. And then once you touch that, you get it on your fingertips, and it can't be absorbed into your skin. That's not a problem, but it can be absorbed once you gets in your nose or your mouth, and sometimes even your eyes. So once you touch a surface that has the virus on it, and then you go touch your mouth or your nose or your eyes, that may be a way to spread it as well. Again, not the main way, but still possible. Now, when are people most contagious? When can you get this virus from someone who's infected? People right now are thought to be most contagious when they're symptomatic, or when they're most symptomatic, when they're the sickest. Now, as of today, I've heard reports saying that they're getting closer to the idea that when someone is not symptomatic, when they have the virus but the symptoms haven't shown up yet, they're starting to figure out, I think, that either you're not as contagious or you're not contagious at all. But you want to stay away from people who are symptomatic. Now, this virus can also infect anybody, and that's the problem. Because this, again, is a novel or new virus to humans, nobody is immune. Nobody is. The only people that are immune at this point are people that have already had it and gotten better. They're the only ones on the planet that are immune at this point. So the rest of us who haven't had it yet are wide open for this. Our bodies have never encountered it before. We've never developed antibodies for it. Our immune systems don't know what it is. So that's why the concern about spreading is so large at this point. Now, the people that are most at risk from this disease are those that are elderly, particularly 70 and above, some say 80 and above, and those who also are what's called immune compromised, which just means that you have some other condition right now before you get the infection that would weaken your immune system or would weaken your lungs or your heart to the point where if you get this infection stacked on top of what you have going on already, your body just simply isn't strong enough to fight it off, and that's when the risk of death comes in. So those are the folks we need to be cognizant of. Those are the people we need to protect in any way we can from this virus. What are the symptoms? Okay, symptoms to look out for, according to the Center for Disease Control and also the World Health Organization, are three. The three big ones are a fever, a dry cough, and shortness of breath. Now, what's missing from that? What's missing from that is some symptoms that you might get: fatigue, achy joints, and things like that. But you're not seeing anything about stuffy nose or sinus congestion or anything like that. This is a virus that impacts your lungs. It impacts your breathing, and that's all it does. So the fever, the dry cough, and the shortness of breath are the three things you want to look for. Now, as you know, there are other things that can cause those three symptoms. Excuse me. Could just be a cold. Could be a bronchitis. Could be any number of things. But if you have these three symptoms, you need to assume for the moment that you might have COVID-19, and you need to take the appropriate precautions. And we're going to talk about what those are here in a moment. Now, these symptoms usually appear, as from what we know so far, between 2 days and 2 weeks after you've been exposed to the virus. So up to 2 weeks, you can be symptom-free before this kicks in. Now, that brings me to another couple terms I want to talk about here, because you're going to hear a lot about these, and I'm sure you already have. A positive test and a presumptive positive test for COVID-19, for having the illness. You hear a lot about people tested presumptive positive. What does that mean? It means that they have been tested for the disease and they have gotten a positive result from the test, but that test has been done at the local health level, at the local hospital or your city hospital. It can only be counted as an actual bona fide positive test if the CDC tests you and finds out you're positive. So a presumptive positive and a positive just depend on who did the test and who counted it up. So we're going to have a lot of presumptive positives cropping up as more and more people report to hospitals and doctors' offices for testing on the local level. We can't all go to Atlanta to the Center for Disease Control. We can go to our local health provider for that. So I've talked about this a little bit already, but another big question is, how dangerous is this virus overall? Honestly, without all the hype, without all the drama, really, what's going on? Well, let's talk about that. It depends on who you ask how dangerous it is. Meaning, what is the death rate? How many people are dying from this compared to how many people get it? That depends on how you measure. Okay, I'm not trying to be, again, I'm trying to be simple about this, but we have to compare apples to apples here a little bit. Now, a couple days ago, it was announced by the World Health Organization that they think the death rate for the virus is around 3%. Now, what that means is what they've done is they have taken the total number of people that have tested positive that they're aware of, and then they've looked at what percentage of that population has passed away from this disease. And that's how they get the 3%. Now, most people will tell you as sort of a side note that, well, they had to do it that way because they have to go with concrete, solid numbers that they know of beyond the shadow of a doubt. But what we don't know is actually how many people have or have had this virus so far. We think that because it's generally so mild in folks, there's a lot of people that either didn't know they had it, there are people that maybe had the virus but didn't ever develop symptoms, or there are people that had it and it was mild enough, they just thought it was a cold or bronchitis. They never went to the doctor and they got better on their own. So there's no way we can count them as part of the people who we know for sure had the virus. Now, if you look at that population, probably, again, I say probably, the death rate is probably less than 1% overall. So the 3% may be an overestimate. So how dangerous is it? For most of us, it's not going to be that bad from what we know so far. So again, that's a reason not to panic. That's a reason not to go crazy about this. And we're going to talk more about that later. But again, for the vast majority, it's not going to be a big deal. It is going to be a big deal for the elderly. It's going to be a big deal for those who are already sick with something else or have immune systems that aren't strong enough to fight it off. So we'll talk about that more as well in a moment. So let's say you get this virus and you need treatment. What can be done? Well, unfortunately, not much at this point. Because this is a new virus, brand new to humanity, we don't have a cure. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have much of anything to stop it right now. Antibiotics don't work because it's a virus, not a bacteria, and antibiotics only work on bacteria. You may be given antibiotics as what's called a prophylactic treatment, and all that means is they want to give you something to make sure you don't catch a bacterial infection on top of having COVID-19, because that then could get dangerous for you. So they do that as sort of a guard against you getting something else on top of what you already have. But influenza medications, they don't work. Influenza vaccines, they don't work because it's a different kind of virus. It just doesn't work. So there are several possible treatments in the pipeline right now that we think might be helpful. But again, they haven't been released to be used on the general public as of yet. There are also vaccines being worked on. One in the United States I'm aware of, and I think one overseas as well. There are probably others that I'm not aware of at this point. And I truly hope they're all sharing information with each other so we can get one should it become needed. But as of right now, with the information I have, we're at least a year away from anything like that coming out for the general public. So we do have medications that will help reduce symptoms. For example, if you have a fever, you can take an Advil or a Tylenol, and that can knock your fever down a little bit. But as a side note here, I would argue that it's probably not a good idea to do that unless your fever gets very, very high, above 104, for example. Reason being, you don't have a fever because the virus is giving you a fever. You have a fever because your body knows the virus is in there, and it is giving you the fever as a way of helping your body fight off the infection. Fevers work for you, not against you. They raise up your body temperature because at higher temperatures, your body knows that the viruses probably won't reproduce as fast as they would when under normal body temperature conditions. So what it's doing is, even though it's uncomfortable, even though it gives you the shakes and the chills and the sweats and all of that, it's helping you get better faster in the long run. So if your fever is within a safe limit, again, less than 104, it would be best if you just let it run and hopefully can ride that out without taking too much medication to knock that down. Because you knock the fever down, your body temperature goes back down. You're actually helping the virus more than you're helping your immune system. And there's a chance you could stay sicker longer or things could get more severe. So best to avoid that if you can. Now, let's say you have to go to the hospital. Let's say you do get a case of this and it gets severe enough that you do have to go to the hospital. What they will do there is what they call supportive treatment, meaning they're going to keep you alive. I know that sounds kind of morbid, but that's a hospital's job for everybody, right? Keep you alive. That's what they're there for. So they're going to keep you alive and as comfortable as possible until you can recover for yourself. That's what it boils down to. If the illness gets very severe, of course, they can give you oxygen, or they can even give you artificial ventilation should the need arise. Excuse me. Now, two more terms, because we're talking about these a lot too: epidemic and pandemic. You probably know about these, but I'm going to go over them anyway, just so we're all on the same page. Now, what an epidemic is, it's an outbreak of a disease like this virus that affects communities of people, but only in a small part of the world, or maybe a small part of the country. Like, for example, the initial epidemic of this started in one province in China all by itself. It has since spread from there, but an epidemic is an outbreak of disease, again, that affects a group of people, but in a small geographical area, a small part of the world. Now, pandemic is a disease that first becomes an epidemic, but then it spreads and it spreads and it spreads and it spreads, and it starts to affect people all over the world. Once we get people being affected all over the world, now we're talking about a pandemic. As of right now, to my knowledge, the novel coronavirus is still being called an epidemic. But as we know, it's pretty much spread all over the world at this point. So technically speaking, it is a pandemic. And that's from one perspective, okay. Yes, it's affecting more people. But what I want you to understand about a pandemic is all that tells you is that it's spread to a larger part of the world. Nothing about the virus has changed. It is no stronger. It is no more virulent. It is no more dangerous. It is has no bigger teeth than it had before. It's just affecting more people. So is it a reason to panic? Of course, it's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to take it seriously. It's a reason to be vigilant. It's a reason to take steps to protect yourselves, your loved ones, and your community. But it's not a reason to panic. It is not the zombie apocalypse, okay? So moving on. Big questions now. What can we do? What can we do for ourselves? What can we do for our communities? And those are sort of two different questions. And we have to make sure we're conscious of both. Self-preservation, obviously, yes. We tend to think about ourselves first and our loved ones first in these situations. That's human nature. No problem there. But because this is such a benign or such a mild disease, or is going to be for most of us, we can take time to think about what we can do, not just for ourselves, but for our community. So let's talk about that. We want to stay away from large social gatherings for a while. Okay, a lot of places are shutting down the big venues like big concerts or athletic events or meetings or conferences or things like that. Those things are sort of slowing down and stopping for the moment. Conventions, those sorts of things where a bunch of people get together, because we're running into cases like with the conservative convention that happened a couple days ago at this point, where one person showed up there who had it, shook a few hands, and it made national news. So a lot of companies, a lot of corporations, and a lot of visitor centers and things like that are starting to slow down or stop these things. Travel, we probably want to keep that to a minimum for a while as well. Public bathrooms, this is one I want to talk about in a little bit more detail. Why don't you want to use public bathrooms if you can possibly help it at this point? Well, what we found out is, again, this virus is transmitted from one person to another through droplets in the air, right? What we've also found out is it's not just spit or things coming out of your mouth, of your nose, that contain this virus. This virus has also been found, excuse me, in both urine and feces. So when you are in the bathroom and you use the bathroom, toilet or urinal, doesn't matter, and you flush, what happens is even though you can't see it, water vapor shoots out of that toilet or urinal and basically spreads throughout the bathroom. I know, great to think about, isn't it? Well, we have to think about it at this point. And once this vapor's in the air, it can get in your nose or your mouth when you breathe, or if nobody else is in there, it can coat the surfaces, the railings, the handles, the sinks, the countertops, the paper towel that's even hanging out. And if you touch those things and you get that liquid on your skin or the virus on your skin, again, it won't absorb through your skin, but once you touch your face, once you touch your mouth or your nose, you've just infected yourself. So is it impossible to avoid public bathrooms? No, probably not. If you work in an office, there's a public bathroom. If you have an emergency out in a restaurant, that's a public bathroom. But do the best you can to avoid it if possible. Now, another big concern in the community with this virus is the economic impact it's going to have, and it has had already. As of today, I think the stock market is making a bit of a rebound, but for a few days there, it was tanking big time because people were starting to get scared about this virus and what it means. It has slowed industry. It has slowed shipping. It has slowed production in certain areas, and it's probably going to continue to do that. So one of the big concerns with this illness isn't that it's going to be deadly for a large group of people. It's that it's going to make a large group of people sick in the first place. And if that happens, If you run a company and most of your workforce is sick, you can't run your business anymore. And whatever you do, whatever service or product you're in the business of, doesn't happen. And if that happens enough all over the country, all over the world, we're going to have some economic impacts that aren't great. So we want to make sure we're protecting ourselves and our community by staying home if we're sick, but going to work if we possibly can, if we're not sick. Another problem or concern might be that if a whole bunch of people get sick, say in the United States all at once, that it's going to overwhelm our doctors and our hospitals. Hospitals only have so many beds. They only have so many ventilators. They only have so many oxygen tanks. We only have so many medications. And if so many people get sick and go to the hospital all at once for this, it's going to overwhelm them, and supplies of things are going to get limited. Now, that means that if you're sick enough with this COVID-19 to be in the hospital, you're at risk of getting more severe or perhaps even passing away. But also, that takes away from people being treated for other conditions and other problems in the hospital as well. So their death rates may go up as well. Plus, what happens if the people who are on the front lines, the doctors and nurses at the hospitals, begin to get sick also? Well, then your workforce goes down as well. So overwhelming the healthcare system is a concern at this point. And we're going to talk about what you can do to do your part to help avoid that as well here in a moment. That moment has come. Let's talk about what can I do? What can you do as an individual in this case? Well, first of all, wash your hands. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. And I mean a lot, as often as you can. Whether you've touched anything or not, wash your hands and get compulsive about it if you can. Why? Because we got to get the virus off of our hands before we touch our face, before we infect ourselves. And that's going to be the primary route this is going to happen by. If you can't wash your hands, it's a good idea to have alcohol-based hand sanitizer available that contains at least 60% alcohol. Now understand, soap and water are the best way to do this because, again, these viruses are on the surface of your skin, right? While hand sanitizer does a great job with bacteria and can have an impact on viruses, the best way to get a virus from getting inside your body is to wash it off of yourself. And when you use soap and water and you rinse your hands under the water, that virus, along with the soap and everything, is washed off of your hands and down the drain. If you think about hand sanitizer, you don't rinse that off, do you? You just rub your hands together until it evaporates. Well, nothing was washed off of your skin, so some of those viruses may still remain. Is it better than nothing? Absolutely it is. But it would be best to wash your hands with soap and water. You want to do that for at least 20 seconds. That's long enough to sing the ABCs twice or to sing happy birthday to you twice. Now, also, along with hand hygiene, we don't want to touch our face unless we have clean hands. Now, it's important to understand we touch our faces a lot, people, at least 20 times an hour for most of us. That's a lot, whether you're aware of it or not. So we all need to develop good discipline in touching our face. It's not easy. We do it unconsciously. We do it by habit. We do it because we itch. We do it for all number of reasons. So whatever you can do to help keep your hands below your chin, please do so. An example of what I'm doing with my girlfriend is we're just watching each other. And every time one of us, we see each other touch our face, we just go beep and we bring it up to each other. We say, hey, you just touch your nose, you just touch your mouth. And slowly we're starting to break that habit of touching our faces often. So I'm just as guilty of it as you are. How to hand wash? Here's a good graphic of that. This was put out by the World Health Organization. There's a link below that you can pause to get that yourself, to download or print out for your friends or family or whatever. I'll also post a link in the description where you can get a hold of that. I have them out in my office for everybody to take home with them. What else can we do? Well, we can avoid close contact with people we know are sick. We want to stay at least 5 to 6 feet away from anybody with a cough. Is it a little bit paranoid? Maybe, but it's better safe than sorry at this point. Anybody coughing, stay at least 5 to 6 feet away from them. Why? Because when you cough or when you sneeze and you expel that vapor, it's not going to hang in the air forever. Most of it's going to fall down to the ground just by gravity. So we just want to stay far enough away from it so it does that before it falls on you. So 5 to 6 feet away is a good thing to do there. If you're coughing or sneezing, do it into your elbow. Don't do it out into the world. Don't share the wealth. If you have a tissue with you, want to cough or sneeze into a tissue, by all means do so, but please throw that away immediately. You want to disinfect all surfaces. as often as you can, especially if you live in a home or an apartment where there's more than one person. You want to stay rested and well nourished. That's going to help your immune system be strong and help fight off this. And above all, please, please, please don't panic. Don't panic. This, again, is not the apocalypse. This isn't something that's going to ravage the human race. It's going to pass by. Unfortunately, yes, people are going to die, and I do not belittle that at all. If you know someone who has passed away or someone in your family has passed away, you have my deepest condolences. And what I want to do more than ever is to make sure you know that and make sure no one else goes through the same thing you're going through. So what we want to do is we want to protect other people. That's the last thing you can do, is you want to think about protecting other people. If you have these symptoms, if you think you have this or think you've been infected, stay home. I beg of you, please stay home. Whether you feel good or not, it doesn't matter. If you think you have this, you need to stay home and stay away from people. Why? So you can get better as fast as you can and get back to your life, but also so we can protect people who, if they do get this from you, which is going to be mild for you, it may be deadly for them. So we want to make sure we protect everybody. And we would do that by keeping ourselves away from others if we think we have this condition. So, as I just talked about, if you begin having these symptoms and you suspect you have the virus, you self-quarantine at home. We're going to talk about some things you can do about that here in a second as far as details go. You stay home, and most people are going to get better all on their own. No medications required, nothing but rest and a little bit of an enforced vacation and a staycation, as it were. However, if you've quarantined yourself at home and you get sick and you get worried, or you feel like this is getting more intense or more severe than you think it should, and you feel like you need to see the doctor, please hear me what I'm about to say. Don't just go see your doctor or report to an ER or an instant care place. Call first. Call your local doctor and tell them what your concerns are, that you think you have this COVID-19, and they will give you instructions about what to do and where to go to get yourself tested and taken care of. Please don't just show up. The doctors and hospitals do not want people with this virus walking in unannounced to their waiting rooms or to the emergency room. That's a way to possibly infect people that can easily be avoided if you simply call first and get the instructions on what to do and how to do it. They will take care of you. They just want you to call first. Follow their instructions once they tell you what they are. So, some frequently asked questions. Is there a vaccine or a cure for this? Well, we've already talked about this a little bit. At this point, no, there is not. There are some vaccines in the works, but again, from what I've been able to glean, it's at least a year away, if not more. Can you get reinfected? Well, again, I'm not going to get technical about this, but the short answer is probably not. Once you have this, you're probably going to have an immunity to it. Now, viruses can do what's called mutate, which means they can change themselves enough where they still give you the similar symptoms and all that, but they look different enough to your immune system that they're not recognized as the same thing that you had before. So you have to develop an immunity to that new mutation as well. But that's probably not going to happen. Is anyone immune? We've talked about this one as well. At this point, the only people who are immune on the planet to this virus are the people that have already had it and gotten better. So for the rest of us, that means no, we are not. Masks. Let's talk about masks for a second, because this is one that's you hear a lot about, but it can get kind of confusing. The CDC and the World Health Organization are both saying that no, you don't need masks to protect yourself from this, because studies show they don't work very good. And plus, you don't want to buy up all the masks and therefore keep them from being in the hands of the people that need them, like the hospital staff and people that are caring for the sick. But that seems to contradict each other, doesn't it? Well, if they don't help, why do the doctors and nurses need them? And if the doctors and nurses need them and we should let them have them, then wouldn't they help me as well? And that has led to people buying out these masks all over the place. Really hard to get a hold of any good masks right now. So if you decide you want to wear a mask, I need to go over some details with you about that. And this will shed light about why they're talking the way they are about us common citizens versus doctors and nurses in the hospital needing the masks. First of all, for a mask to do you any good at all in this particular instance, as far as avoiding getting infections with the virus, the mask you're using has to be what's called a respirator mask. And that's different from the surgical masks. And I have a picture up here where you can kind of see the differences. And I'm going to point them out to you. The surgical mask, the non-respirator mask, you notice has strings that wrap around your ears and cover your mouth and your nose. And the respirator mask has elastic bands that go around your head and cover your mouth and your nose as well. The difference is, one of the things you're going to notice with the respirator mask, you see that metal band that goes across the woman's nose. What that does is that allows you to bend and pinch that so it forms a seal and helps the mask form a seal around your mouth and your nose by contacting your face and underneath your chin and your cheeks and on the bridge of your nose and so on. That's the trick. That's the difference between them. A respirator mask forms a seal. So every breath you take, all the air that goes into your lungs has to pass through the material of the mask to get there. The non-respirator masks, as you can see if you look like between the strings that go around the woman's ears, there's a gap there. There's an air gap. That mask, and there's no metal band to go across the bridge of the nose. So that type of mask has no seal. So when you inhale, yes, some of the air you take in goes through the mask material, but some of it comes in around the edges too. And that air has not been filtered one little bit. It's got as much virus in it as if you just took a deep breath without the mask on at all. So that's why they're saying masks really aren't the help you think they're going to be. Okay. They do tell you that it's better if you're infected, then you wear a mask, because then when you cough and sneeze, that liquid is going to hit the mask, most of it anyway, and be absorbed there instead of flying into the room. It's still going to fly out the gaps if you use the non-respirator mask. But if you use a respirator mask, that will help somewhat contain it as well. But again, if there's any air gap in that mask at all, it's not going to help you much. Also, another reason they don't want you using masks, or say they don't help very much, let's put it that way, is because when you're wearing a mask like this and you're talking and you're moving, you're inevitably going to reach up and adjust the mask. And when you adjust the mask, you're touching your face. You might have to, if you're using the non-respirator masks, you might have to pull it around your ear and make sure it fits right, or maybe it gets crooked or starts to dip down a little bit. You're touching your face to do that. If you're wearing the respirator mask, then anytime you move that mask, you break the seal between that mask and your skin, and again, exposed to the outside air. So there's a lot of pitfalls to wearing masks. If you do insist on wearing one, A, make sure it's a respirator mask, and B, once it's on, don't touch it. Fair enough? Okay. Now, a couple more pictures real quick here. This is another version of a respirator mask. You see these at the Home Depot and Lowe's and places like that, because a lot of painters and woodworkers and people like that need a mask that's a bit more high tech and a bit more of a better filter. So you can get one like this as well. It's just another way of getting a respirator mask. So again, if you're shopping for masks, if you're fortunate enough to find some in a store someplace, make sure, as this picture shows, you look on the container and make sure it says respirator. If it doesn't, don't save your money. It's not going to help you much at all. If you want any hope of it helping you at all, make sure it says respirator on the container. Now, self-quarantine. How do we self-quarantine? Well, there's a number of things you can do. Again, if you get these symptoms, which are, again, fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, go home, stay there. Don't leave your house. Meaning, don't get in your car and drive anywhere. If you want to go out in your yard and walk around, that's fine. Sit out on your deck, that's fine too. But stay at home. Don't get around other people. That means no visitors. You stay in your house. You don't invite anybody over. If they want to come over, even if they're not afraid and they just want to help you or show you support, that's very, very kind of them. But please invite them to stay away for the moment for their protection. If you live in a household with more than one person, family, spouse, roommate, what have you, you get your own room for a while. So stay isolated in a room by yourself and keep the door closed as much as you possibly can. You want to ventilate the room with the window open if possible. Now, where I am in Iowa, it's still pretty cold this time of year. So some days you can get away with having a window open, others it gets pretty cold, but do it as best you can, weather permitting. Shared surfaces need to be disinfected, especially the bathroom and the kitchen. Okay, again, we talked about why in the bathrooms. That same water vapor that happens when you flush a toilet in a public restroom happens when you flush a toilet at home. Now, at home, one thing you can do that isn't always an option in a public restroom is you can close the lid. If you close the lid, that's going to limit the amount of vapor that shoots out of that toilet once you flush it. It's not going to completely stop it, but it will minimize it. Even so, disinfect all shared surfaces, countertops, door handles, sink handles, everything you can think of, disinfect it and do it often. Don't share plates, cups, utensils, anything. If you have an infection with this particular virus, you get your own stuff for a while, okay? Use it and don't intermingle it with everybody else's stuff. You keep it separate and you clean it separately in separate water and everything, okay? Don't share anything. Waste products, garbage, double bag it. Why? Because there's going to be somebody that's going to come out to the curb and pick that up. And if, a lot of the garbage bags these days are pretty flimsy and they tear easily, drop of a hat. So if you double bag it, that just is another layer of protection between the outside world and the Kleenexes or anything else that you have touched or gotten the virus on. That's there. Now, I want to touch on this as well. We're talking about getting the virus from surfaces. And I looked to try to figure out how long the virus will live on a surface. I can't get a concrete answer about that, so I'm not going to tell you a concrete answer. It can be anywhere, I've heard, from 2 to 5 days, and then it depends on the type of surface. Is it a porous surface versus a smooth surface, and so on. I will continue to look, and should I find something, I will post a link to that or make a separate video about that or amend this one to reflect that information. So again, what do you do if you need medical care? This bears repeating, and please, 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 if you hear nothing else about this, hear these 3 things. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, and if you need medical care, call your doctor first. Don't just show up as I explained. Call them. They will give you instructions on where to go, what to do when you get there, and so forth. Follow those instructions and you will get the care you need. So some of the best advice I can give you as far as summing this up. Number 1, above all, ladies and gentlemen, please don't panic. Again, this is not the zombie apocalypse. For most of us, this is going to be a mild illness at best. It's going to go away by itself. You won't need the doctor. You won't need the hospital. You won't need medication. It's just going to kind of be like a common cold. You're going to get it, be uncomfortable for a number of days, and then you're going to get better. And that's going to be the end of it. And after that, yippee, you're immune. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But don't panic. If you get it, don't panic. If you are immune compromised, if you have underlying conditions that may cause this to become a problem, again, contact your healthcare provider as soon as you get the symptoms so they're aware of it and they can start treating you immediately. We want you well. We want you to get through this. We want you to go on with your life and this just be a bump in the road and not an emergency. So those of you who with immune issues, please contact your doctor as soon as you think you might be infected or begin to develop the symptoms. Again, wash your hands properly and often. Follow the directions on the sheet I showed you earlier. You want to disinfect all surfaces. You want to stay 5 to 6 feet away from anyone who's coughing. If you're sick, stay home. If you wonder, I'm kind of sick, should I go to work or not? The answer is no. Stay home, protect yourselves, protect other people you're working with. If you're an employer, if you have employees, or you're a manager, or you're another way interacting with employees, if you see someone who's sick at work, send them home. Send them home immediately. Again, I understand. I'm a business owner myself. I'm self-employed as well. I don't get paid time off any more than some of you do. But if you are sick or an employee is sick, no matter how much you think you need them that day, please, I beg you, send them home. Protect, protect, protect. If you're going to wear a mask, do it properly. Do a respirator mask and don't touch it once you put it on. Again, this virus, I don't want to belittle it, but I don't want to overblow it either. And that's so we got to find a balance here. Take it seriously. Do your best to protect yourselves and those you love, but don't overreact. If you're buying things, if you happen to go out and find some hand sanitizer or some Clorox wipes, or at this point, understand toilet paper, yes, get what you need, but please don't overbuy. Don't hoard. Don't take away from someone else who also needs it. Exercise some restraint, exercise some self-control, and exercise some love for your fellow man, and help everybody have the supplies they need. So take precautions, use common sense. Don't be ruled by fear or panic, no matter how dramatic the media gets. And believe me, it gets dramatic. I watch a newscast and I start to freak out about this, and I've been studying this more than the average bear. So I know it can get to you. I know it can really rile you up and get you afraid and make you want to go hide under the bed or in the basement. You don't have to. All right. This is going to be, again, for most of us, a mild condition at best. Take care of yourselves. Take it seriously, but don't overreact. The best thing I can tell you again is most cases will need very little treatment and people will recover by themselves. No doctors necessary, no drugs necessary. You're going to get over it by yourself. The immune compromised, the elderly, people like that, we want to stay away from the doctors if we can, so they have access to them, to the beds, to the ventilators, to everything that they may need, because they are at higher risk. And again, we're taking care of ourselves, but we're taking care of our neighbors too in this particular instance. So above all, keep calm, wash your hands. That's the best advice I can give you. And also, two things to always remember, and I will sign off every single one of my videos this way. There is hope. All right. Again, this isn't like in the movies where there's a contagion that's spreading and everybody's going to die and they have 2 hours to come up with a vaccine. This isn't that, and it's not going to happen that way. We're going to get through this, guys. We're going to get through this, and it's going to be okay. People, unfortunately, are passing away and are going to pass away, and I can't overstate that. So what we need to do is understand, again, I'm repeating myself, I know I am, I'm doing it on purpose. Take care of the people that are highest risk of having complications from this illness that might cause them to fear for their lives or to fight for their lives. But there's hope. We're going to get through this. We're going to keep on going. And understand always, you are loved. So with that, I will sign off. Again, I hope this video has given you benefit. I wish you all the best. Please take care of yourselves, those you love, and also your neighbor. Have as good a day as you can. And also, again, thank you for watching. If you like this video and would like to see more content coming up in the future, I have lots of things planned, lots of things that are much more uplifting than this one. Please hit the like button, subscribe if you'd like, and also if you'd like to be notified every time I put out a new video, which hopefully be every week or every couple weeks, hit the bell and you'll get an alert on your phone letting you know when the new one has been uploaded to YouTube. So again, thank you. Have as good a day as you can. And remember, there is hope and you are loved.